Okay, everybody, I've got 1 o'clock. Welcome to the Agriculture and Consumer Affairs meeting today. I appreciate everyone being here. And I'm going to ask Representative Danny Mathis to start us off with a prayer.
Well, we thank you for today. We thank you for this committee. We just thank you for the many folks that are here representing whatever cause that they have. But help us to take your guidance on every decision we make down here, that it'll be glorified to you. And for it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. We got a full agenda today, and I appreciate our presenters being here. Before we get started, I got a few people I want to introduce. We have a new lead council person, Dave Barry. Dave, welcome. I cannot remember, brand new to lead council, came to us from what state? Virginia. So we'll look forward to working with you, Dave, and if any of y'all got any ag issues, Dave be the one I think you need over in the lead council office. Last time we were together was our Perry meeting, and I appreciate many of you being there for that meeting, and I thought that was good as well. And since that, really before the Perry meeting, I want to formally introduce a new member of this committee, Lisa Hagan from Lyons, the 156th district. So glad you are with us and on this committee. So, also in the last few weeks, we had a little legislative livestock roundup show down at Perry, and we did not do very well. I was, I think it's due to the chairman's choice of some people, but our team gave it a full effort, and Bandisha worked very hard on our committee. Thomas with her lamb. We also had Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones, a Minority Whip David Wilkerson, Chairman John Carson, and Chairman Heath Clark. But we came up on the short end to the Senate. So we're gonna do better next year. If I'm in this seat, any of you on this committee got any experience in showing livestock, y'all let me know. Or anybody in on our House chamber, we're gonna put the full effort. We bringing Sam Watson in, maybe some of those. We just gonna that trophy. It's really missed in my office. You walked in front of Lee Goff's desk there, and that trophy, it's a blank spot there, but it's gonna be there this time next year, I hope, if I got anything to do with it. So Representative Wilson, glad you're here. Congratulations on your wedding this past weekend. Is that right? Well, great. Thank you for being here. So we'll get right to our agenda. I want to introduce a great friend of mine, Executive Director, Georgia National Fairgrounds and Agri Center in Perry, Stephen Shemp, asked to come here. Great facility there. Several of us on this committee are on the oversight committee, and Stephen and his team do a great job in Perry. Really important facilities for our state, and especially for our young people in this state. It's much more than a carnival once a year down there. It's going 52 weeks a year with multiple events, and I think Stephen's going to try to explain a little bit more to you about what really does go on. Had some real challenges over the last 2 years down there, a year since COVID. Definitely negative affected their financial situation down there, and employees, as it has many other businesses, and they really run that facility as a business down there. So Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you, and committee welcomes you here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Don't hold it against us. We're only the host of the livestock showdown. We don't judge it or anything like that. So we're just the facility where it's at. So better luck next year. So We come to you today as very grateful people. Most of you know we were in COVID hit. It's been 2 years of, well, a year and a half. I'm trying to forget how long ago it was, but we went through some very difficult times. We had to lay people off. We were in a dire situation, that facility down there. And it's for thank you to you folks. We've come back stronger and better than ever. Our financial position right now is pretty much unprecedented for what we were. We learned, and Chairman Dickey and Mr. Jaspers, we learned that our business model may not have been the best for the last 30 years, and we weren't prepared to go through COVID, where events were just continually canceling on us. So we took a step back and we said, we've got to take control of our own destiny, basically is the position that we took. And we've added a few events in there. We didn't have the Georgia National Fair, but we kind of made up for it as we went along, as we were able. We had an event called May Days on the Midway in May when the restrictions dropped a little bit. We had our ride provider come in and basically put on a carnival for those who like to ride the rides. And we were happy at the end, we were able to put $600,000 in our bank account. And it helped us to bide the time. And of course, the assistance from the House and the Senate and in the governor's office, you know, we were able to get through it. We put on a couple of different events. We're now a host of an antique agriculture show that we just got through with, and it's, you know, becoming profitable for us. So I come to this today to let you know we're not sitting back on our heels, and if we have to go through something like this again, I'm hoping that we're not sitting in front of you, you know, in the position that we were in the past. It opened up a lot of eyes, and we are, again, I'll say it for myself and 60 other employees that we have at the Georgia National Fairgrounds and Agri Center. We are some grateful people. Sometimes we feel like we're all alone down there in Little Perry, but y'all made us feel like we're part of the big picture and part of the big team. So we thank you for that. And I brought my financial man here with me, and he can, if there's questions on where we're at financially, where we're headed in the future. I'll tell you, this past fair, we did 485,000 people came through the gates. We were down a little bit, still some fears from COVID, I guess, but folks came out and they had a great time, and everybody had a little bit of money in their pocket, so it felt good. So we're not going to call, we're calling it one of the best comebacks that I've ever been involved with, and we are on track to have probably our best financial year ever. We've attracted some new national shows. We've got the National Junior High School Rodeo will be coming. I think it's the first time it's ever been east of the Mississippi. We actually flew out to Wyoming to sell that. And we were in some pretty big company out there with the Western states, and there was a lot of cowboy hats and cowboy boots out there, but we fit right in with them, and we were able to bring it to Perry. So we've got several more events that we'll be going after in the future to really nail down our destiny, that we can stay up and thriving. Of course, our number one mission is the children in agriculture, teaching the next generation what agriculture is all about. And so with that, we're gonna continue on. So if y'all have any questions, we're here to answer them. We're an open book, and Mr. Rogers has the financial knowledge that he can answer any questions that you may have.
We've got a couple of questions, and I failed to recognize a couple of members that are online. Representative Rebecca Mitchell, welcome. Thank you for being with us, as well as my Vice Chairman, Susan Holmes, is Zooming with us online. And so I see my colleague, Representative Patty Bentley.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for sharing. I got a chance to be on the fairgrounds for the legislative showdown, and I was really proud of my colleagues in the House of Representatives, even though the Senate did a little something different. But we were really proud to have the fair back in the Middle Georgia area, and so grateful to have the Ag Center there in Perry. You've provided a really good report this afternoon, but I just can't help but to ask, I saw in the news, unfortunately, some stories about some young people ended up being sick, and some of the parents felt like it was all contributing to the activities at the fair. Are you all aware of that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Can you share a little about
Yeah,
what's the status?
we're still waiting on the health department to come back with, accurate information. But what we've tracked it to is the cattle barn. Basically, cattle inherently have E. coli. And unfortunately, some young people that had gone into that barn, and that is the common factor, is that all 5 cases went into the cattle barn. They all didn't eat the same thing. They all didn't go to the petting zoo. The one commonality that they had was that they went into the cattle barn. So we're pretty sure that it was contracted there. Our prayers have been with those affected by it. To this point right now, the last child is home and okay.
Good.
So we're happy to report that. We're looking at right now, the steps that we take. We put hand washing stations everywhere. Hand sanitizer is available throughout the buildings. We're beginning to question whether we allow strollers into the barn. The floors inherently are wet, and it's a cattle barn. And we can't help but think that may have been a contributor to how they contracted the disease. Also, the public has an inherent, and Steve will tell you, his son shows cows. They can't help it when a cow walks by to stick their hand out and rub it down the side of a cow. I mean, it's part of it. So we're taking a complete step back, going to determine what we think is safe for who to enter that building. But it's a big part of what we do, introducing young people to go in there and see these children working on cattle. That's a big part of it, how they get them ready to show. So we've working with the health department. We'll take any recommendations that they have to make it safer for anybody going into that building. So.
Well, thank you for that update. And I too share the same sentiments about the families that were affected. We pray that all continues to go well with the small children. But again, thank you for sharing that information.
Okay, we got a couple other questions. Floor Leader LaRicchia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director, for your update. And you mentioned about the support of the governor and for our fairgrounds. And I just can't let this opportunity go by without publicly saying how blessed we are that Governor Brian Kemp was at the wheel when we went through this COVID pandemic, not just for what we operate as part of the fairgrounds, but what we've had to do in this state to try to keep small businesses open and keep people working and protect livelihoods. And so I wanted to mention that, but also I've said this, that because of in light of the COVID pandemic, I truly believe that Governor Kemp's going to go down as one of, if not the best governors this state has had the opportunity to serve with. But I also wanted to mention too, thank you to what Georgia Farm Bureau does for our fairgrounds. And could you give us just a little bit of a brief, this committee and the public, let them know how involved Georgia Farm Bureau is with those fairgrounds and how much we appreciate their partnership.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Farm Bureau basically helps us pay the children their prize money. They donate $200,000 a year to our program. And we use that money to support the livestock program. The same as our appropriation, we add it basically to the appropriation that we get from you all and from the governor's office. And it's kind of a private-public partnership to reward those children for coming out to show. Farm Bureau, Mr. Tom McCall, President McCall, he's a good friend of mine, and he's a great friend of agriculture, of course, in this state. And he's a great friend of the Georgia National Fairgrounds and Agri Center. He believes in what we do. He believes in every aspect of our business. And just to say, we couldn't have a better partner than Farm Bureau with us at the Georgia National Fairgrounds.
Thank you. Representative Wilson, got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you both for being here. and appreciate that update on how you're weathering COVID and making sure that the fairgrounds and Agri Center are going to be stronger than ever before. I think anyone who's ever been to the Perry Fair or any other event that y'all have had surely can see the cultural significance that you play here in Georgia. And as a former 4-H'er, Mr. Chairman, I never showed livestock, so I don't recruit me, but a lot of my 4-H brethren and FFA brethren have benefited from the Agri Center, so I appreciate that. I'm curious, I should know this and I don't, so I apologize, but how much of your operating budget is state funded?
In a normal year, it would be approximately 10%.
We generate 90% of our
90 plus.
own revenue. Now, of course, before we looked at our business plan and we were relying on a 10-day outdoor event to provide 65% of our revenue.
Mhm.
The fair was providing 65% of our annual revenue. And when COVID hit and we couldn't have it, and then I started thinking, well, what happens if we have 10 rainy days in a row? You know, that we've got to really step back and look at, can we possibly generate enough income where on a good year, we can put a little bit of money back in a reserve. So that's something that we're looking at also. There's, you know, there's talks of a foundation. There's talks of different ways that we can have money set aside if we have to go through and not, again, that was the worst year of my life, was coming up here and basically knowing that the survival of that facility was in y'all's hands. That's a bad feeling as a director, as 60 employees that I have to go back and report to and let them know if they have a job tomorrow, you know, so I don't ever want to be in that position, and I don't want to put you all in that position. And there's other things that I know that you all have to take care of. So we're going to do the best that we can. And what we would like to take that 90% to 100% and have some cash reserves in there. So I wish there were more days in a year, and Chairman Dickey will let you know, we'll have 7 events going on at one time during a weekend. And it's so we've added another horse arena. The Purdue Arena has come online, and it opened up a whole new calendar of dates for us to have events. It's booked. It's booked out. So there may be some expansion that we need to do in the future. But we don't want to address that until we solve our labor problem. That's an issue that we have right now is labor. We can't find them. And I think that's nationwide. I think that's statewide, but we're not an exception. It's a major problem for us. We're 9 positions down right now, and they are positions where the rubber meets the road, cleaning out stalls, you know, labor positions. So that's an issue that we're dealing with.
And you said 10% in a normal year. What is it right now?
Y'all,
Well, for the fiscal year ended, it was about 30% after the extra money that was allotted to us.
I think it's certainly money well spent.
thank you.
A question, Chairman Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephen, thank you for being here, and thank you for the job y'all do. We spend a lot of time at the fairgrounds. I may have to object if you take strollers out of the barns though, because that's going to shut down my operation. But no, all seriousness, I know as you continue to grow events there, and I know there's been talk of a hotel coming on the property, and that will only grow your facility even more. Could you maybe update the committee on where that's at and what we're looking at there? Because I do know there's a shortage of rooms, and if you don't get your rooms early at fair time, then you're going to be down the road a piece. But maybe if you'll just update us.
Sure.
Excuse me on that. And then I've got a specific request of air conditioners or fans in the ladies' restroom. So I had to squeeze that in because I'm. I have 4 of them at my house. So, but no, thank y'all.
I went and looked specifically at putting there, so we're going to get that taken care of. For those who don't know, we partnered with a company, LNW Hospitality. They built the Westin Hotel on Jekyll Island. They partnered with their authority. Jekyll entered into a land lease with them. So we thought, what a model for us to follow. It's already been written. The contract is written. So basically we stole everything from Jekyll Island to bring to our authority. We are putting them in about 126 room Marriott product. It'll be dual branded for night stays. Next will be 60 rooms will be kind of extended stay for people like Sam who come and spend more than 4 days and would like a kitchenette, and they have children and they need a little refrigerator so they don't go broke going out to eat every night. But so it's a great partnership. Right now, we are in the design phase. They're looking for a civil engineer right now to come and lay out the property. They're leasing 3 acres from us. So, and it will be attached directly to the Miller Murphy Howard building. If you're familiar with our facility, big green roof on the interstate side, they will sit prominently right next to it, and it'll be attached, conditioned, where you can come out of your hotel room and go straight into the Miller Murphy Howard, turning Miller Murphy Howard to what it was to be a convention center. So we think that the hotel is the missing piece of the puzzle, drawing that commercial type business. And we'll be hitting y'all to have many more meetings than in Middle Georgia to come down in and patronize the hotel. So we have dreams of state training coming to the Ag Center. We've got the facilities to hold them and to put it, make it a very, very good venue for anybody who's wanting to do any type of trade show or anything like that. So we're excited about it. The company knows LNW 120 after they've, Perry, Georgia is a hard sale. So getting these folks to come and even look was difficult, but we did it. And the 126 rooms, they now realize by going through 6 months with us after COVID, that's not going to be enough. So they have plans to expansion. As soon as they get this one built, we may see another tower come up right next to it. So thank you for that question. It's and the air conditioners in the restrooms are coming. So.
Okay. So folks in this committee are hard to please, but Representative Scoggins.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I missed the year that you said you would be hosting the National Finals Rodeo. When did you say that was?
2022.
2022. All right.
It's a 2-year contract.
22.
Yeah,
They're coming. Yeah, 22 and 23.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
I thought-
big deal. I've been to the
Yes,
one
sir.
in Gillette, Wyoming, and
Yes,
that's
sir.
a big deal, and that'll be big for
Yeah,
Perry.
yeah. So.
Thank
we're-
you.
Okay, we got one more question. We're gonna move on. Chairman Jaspers of the Transportation Committee.
We just had that. We were just giggling down here. Representative Scoggins, are you in the senior division of that event? Okay. No, Mr. Chairman, I had a couple of questions. I'm like you serve on the advisory board. And I just want to tell you, watching you guys go through what you did in 2 years, it was very impressive. And this dedication by you and your employees, but also your volunteer board. I mean, you've got a board who helps you and members, unlike any board you've ever seen. These people who are appointed from across the state, they work and they find the bands. They helped with this hotel. I mean, it's unlike any other board, and it's just a pleasure for us to come just watch many times and put a little bit into it, because you're always striving to improve a great site we have. And I, like you, if you talk to your FFA and 4-H kids and parents, great job this year. I just heard nothing but glowing comments of, because they didn't know and they were worried, because coming in with COVID and all, but it was perfect. I had no complaints whatsoever, but we appreciate what you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Chairman Jasper. I certainly concur with that too. And great job. So thank y'all for being here, Stephen. Thank you for the great job you do. So I see no other questions, and we got a full agenda. So see you later.
Thank you all so
Thank
much.
you. One other person I see in our audience here, I guess, Senator Anderson here. Welcome to the House Ag Committee. And well, we're very honored to have your presence here. Next on our agenda, I'd like to introduce Jordan Watson. We're the Agriculture and also the Consumer Affairs Committee. So I thought we might get a little flavor of some consumer affair issues. We had some bills last year along those lines. And so I've asked Jordan Watson, Director, External Affairs and Policy of the Office of Attorney General, and also Sean Conroy, Outreach Coordinator there as well, Attorney General's office. So welcome, gentlemen, to this committee, and look forward to your presentation.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we appreciate y'all taking a break from drawing maps to let us talk a little bit about what we do. Chairman Dickey, Vice Chair Holmes, and Secretary Meeks, we really appreciate this opportunity to be before the House Ag and Consumer Affairs Committee. It's really an honor to be here. In 2015, the former Office of Consumer Affairs was moved from the Governor's Office to the Georgia Department of Law. Now called the Consumer Protection Division, the unit works every day to protect lives and livelihoods in the state of Georgia. Our Consumer Protection Division is Georgia's primary organization to protect legitimate business enterprises from unfair and deceptive practices that occur within the context of the consumer marketplace. CPD goes about this in two ways: enforcement and education. CPD's enforcement power comes in the form of investigating alleged wrongdoing. They identify patterns and practices of unfair and deceptive conduct that has a broad impact on the consumer marketplace. CPD represents the state of Georgia, and their goal is to put a stop to illegal activities when they occur. CPD's focus is on the civil side. Our CPD unit receives about 20,000 complaints a year, and with a staff under 50, they prioritize their work by choosing to investigate cases that most drastically affect vulnerable populations. Other issues they might tackle include Georgia's lemon law, debt collection, debt management, credit repair, deceptive sales, advertising practices, automobile sales and repairs, and prize sweepstakes and scams. On our education front, CPD's efforts are a major focus. We believe an educated consumer is less likely to fall victim to one of the issues I mentioned a moment ago. We believe that legitimate businesses also want to be informed on how to avoid acting illegally, and we help with that every way that we can. We're not a gotcha organization. We're genuinely here to help. Some of our consumers' education efforts include speaking engagements, media alerts when we learn of scams, and a website designated to help consumers file a complaint. We also provide guides for helpful assistance and education, and Sean's going to go through some of those here in a moment. Our Consumer Protection Unit is here to help. Though we cannot represent Georgians by private action, we do try to make the state better by cracking down on unethical and unlawful actions in the marketplace. We're always here to be of assistance to you, and we want to be helpful to you and your constituents. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Conroy, our Outreach Coordinator, to go into a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Jordan. Just to go into a little more breakdown on those 20,000 complaints that we receive a year, about a quarter of those involve debt issues, and that can be debt collection, abusive debt management, like credit repair or companies that are violating the debt adjustment law, and also fraudulent credit repair services. Another quarter of the complaints that receives are just out and out scams, such as like the grandparent scam that you may hear about in the news, where a caller makes a phone call to a victim, who wants to be a victim, and pretends to be their grandson or granddaughter, and says that I'm in trouble, I need some funds, and I'd like you to send some money via a gift card to us. So we hear that's about 20 to 25% of what we receive, and another 20 to 25% involve automobile issues. That can be car repairs, used car advertising, new car advertising. So as the second biggest purchase that consumers may make after a house, you can imagine, there are going to be disputes involving vehicles. And we also compile a top 10 list of the complaints each year. And the top complaints for 2020, debt issues and auto repair are always at the top. Issues related to the state of emergency, pricing issues, landlord tenant issues, which our division doesn't handle individually. We often refer those to the Department of Community Affairs Landlord Handbook. That's a great tool. And then number 5, lemon law, auto repair issues. Our office administers the state's new car lemon law. So that's part of what we do. Employment issues, home improvement repairs, number 7, healthcare services and billing, new car sales at number 9, and then number 10, utility issues, which if there's an issue that our office receives that's primarily handled by another state agency, for example, with the utility world, if we get a complaint about Georgia Power, we'll generally refer that over to the Georgia Public Service Commission. And that's part of the Fair Business Practices Act that we're encouraged to do that. Another aspect of what we do, and this is important and what I feel passionate about that I want to communicate to you all, if you're not available of the consumer education materials that we produce. One is the Georgia Consumer Protection Guide for older adults. When we put this guide together a couple of years ago, we brought in partners like the GBI, the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, the AARP, and we held focus groups. And we also asked older adults, what's important to be in a guide? And they told us the issues, and we included those. Those included issues that might normally not be in consumer protection, such as elder abuse, financial abuse, but we've included it in the guide because we think that's important. And this is available in both hard copy form and downloadable online. And with the holidays coming up, this is something great to take to family members. Encourage your constituents to do so as well. One more guide that we have is Cybersecurity in Georgia, a guide for small businesses, nonprofits, and places of worship. Now, our larger IT companies, our larger corporations will have personnel on staff, as you know, that are going to be handling messaging to employees about cybersecurity and how to protect the computer systems in the corporation. But our smaller businesses and our churches, our synagogues, our places of worship, they may not have an IT person. So we created this guide with those individuals, those groups in mind, in order that they could communicate information to their employees and about cyber protection. And this is also available online and in hard copy. I also want to mention, lastly, we have a program as Consumer Ed, where we take questions from citizens that are posed to us, and about twice a month, we take it's a little bit like an Ann Landers column, except for consumer issues. And we have our attorneys answer the questions, and then we publish them twice a month at consumered.georgia.gov. And this is all available on our website at consumer.ga.gov. And I want you all to be aware too, that we still continue to maintain even throughout the pandemic, we've maintained our intake counselors to take calls from consumers 5 days a week, 8:30 to 5. And they process the 20,000 complaints that come into the office via email and phone. So they're available to answer calls. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Representative Watson, Chairman Watson, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned debt collection is one of the top things that y'all talk about. What are examples of that, or what does that entail?
Very good question. We recently had an agreement that was filed in court with a debt collection company where the debt collector, there were allegations that the debt collector was calling people with debt and threatening to go to jail. When we receive these complaints, that sometimes the calls are happening at hours that they shouldn't be. So there are good debt collectors. I mean, there is an industry out there, a debt collection industry that is legitimately collecting debt that's owed. But there are those outliers that are not following the law, and they're abusing consumers in different ways. And so when we receive complaints about that, we'll open up an investigation and hopefully stop that bad behavior that's occurring in the marketplace.
I just have one quick question. Have you been able to track down the lady that keeps calling about my expired warranty?
She's calling me too. That's a very good question. And calls about robocalls, fraudulent telemarketing calls, we hear those complaints. And that is an issue that's important, not only to the Consumer Protection Division, but to Attorney General Carr as well. He has signed off on, and Jordan can speak to this as well, signed off on with other states, encouraging our partners at the Federal Communications Commission to in turn implement rules that will encourage our phone carriers to put in place technology that will start to clamp down on these abusive robocalls that are occurring. And some of that's happening. And one report said that there's been a 30% decline in fraudulent robocalls in a 3-month period this past year. So some of that is working.
We do have guidance too on our website, Representative Meeks. If a consumer feels like they're getting blown up with these robocalls, we do have a link to the Federal Trade Commission's donotcall.gov page where they can go through our site and file a complaint, hopefully kind of help join us in cracking down on this practice. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Chairman Taylor.
Thank you. I too am getting robocalls for my college financing. I cannot believe I still get that, but I actually had a couple questions, and it had to do with rental of properties. In the insurance this morning, we had some discussions about some of the issues when there are unsafe facilities, rental apartments and things like that. Some of it are fire marshal issues, but other things are involved. Is that something you would do, or does that go to community affairs, or where would it go?
We welcome complaints. We need to know what's out there. With rental properties, if there is much of what our Fair Business Practices Act deals with are representation, advertising issues. So if we had, for example, an apartment representing that water was included in the monthly rent, and in fact it isn't, that's something that, there was a misrepresentation there. But we want to hear from consumers, and if we're not the right place, we will direct them to the right place.
Could I follow up?
Absolutely.
Okay, another sort of related sideways to this is I had a number of property owners that have been unsuccessful getting their tenants to fill out the paperwork to get assistance for rental income. And is there anything that could be done? These are people that are in their properties. They won't sign the paperwork and they're not paying rent. Where do they go?
Yeah, that relationship between that landlord and tenant it's going to be outside of our scope. But we would encourage them to, well, they're going to have to work it out between themselves, I think.
Yeah. Okay, but that's not really something
not
for your
really.
department. They can't make someone fill
Yeah.
out the paperwork.
Right. While the Department of Community Affairs publishes the landlord tenant handbook, there's not a state agency that injects itself into these relationships.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Lewis Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just was wondering, what's the best way for a consumer to file a complaint? And secondly, do you prioritize the complaints that come in?
Sure. The best way for a consumer to file a complaint, is the most efficient way, is to go to consumer.ga.gov and file an online complaint. We do take complaints. We still have a fax machine. We take those phone calls Monday through Friday at 404-651-8600, 404-651-8600. And often, and consumers are welcome to call, but sometimes we need supporting documents. If there's a advertisement involved, we want a copy of it. If there's an agreement involved, we'd like to see what the terms of the agreement are. So consumers are welcome to call as well. Did I answer the question?
You did. The second part was, do you prioritize the complaints that come in?
Sure. We look for those cases that are going to impact the most people. Because we're operating on behalf of the state of Georgia. If something's egregious, we want to address it. If there is an older adult involved, if there is a disabled adult involved, there are enhanced penalties in the Fair Business Practices Act that address that. So in that way, I think we do. I think that's the way we would prioritize issues.
Okay, Representative Bentley, you have a question, but only one condition. It's not on pre-need funeral expenses.
That's
Go
the end
ahead.
of the meeting then. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two quick things, and it's not really funeral home related this time, but it's just one is a quick comment about how scams can really happen. Back during the time of my husband passing, at my most vulnerable time, I came very close to being scammed. Someone called me and said they was from Georgia Power. And I couldn't remember had I paid the Georgia Power bill or not. And they gave me a phone number to call, and I called and it said Georgia Power. But it wasn't until I asked the question, because the caller didn't know I have more than one Georgia Power bill. And when I asked what address, they couldn't give me the address. And that's what got my attention. Yeah, but I just want to share that because of how things can really happen. And they caught me at a time that I was almost to give them, I had my card right there in my hand, prepared to give it to them.
Representative Bentley, on my phone, I have a recording of a Georgia Power scam. And it is the actual, if you've ever called Georgia Power, there is a female voice that is very familiar to anybody that's called Georgia Power. The scam artists have commandeered, they made a recording themselves of the Georgia Power voice, and they used it within the scam. So what we try to do when we hear of an increase in these types of scams is issue an alert. We've done several on that particular scam. It also impacts our electric membership corporations as well. So we do try to, we listen to what consumers are telling us, and we try to be very aware of something that's happening in the moment, so we can push out a message and amplify that, online, on Twitter, on Facebook, and media may pick it up, so we can get that warning out to our communities.
Okay, and then now to my quick question. During the times of state of emergency, when stores are jacking the price of milk and eggs, constituent calls me and it's 6 o'clock in the evening. How should I handle that?
I would encourage your constituent to contact our office, and after hours, you can ask them to go online and file a complaint, and then, or if they want to wait and discuss it with one of our staff members, one of our counselors, they can again call us and tell us about it. At the beginning of the pandemic, we had the state of emergency in place, and the price gouging statute was in place, and we did receive numerous complaints involving the increase of the price of milk, of eggs, of meat, and so what's also important to communicate to constituents on that price gouging issue, and please refer them to us, because that's what we're supposed to do. Is we do have information on the website about what price gouging is and isn't. And one of the critical parts is if a business is being charged more by their wholesaler, by where they're getting the product, they can pass that on to the consumer. So that's something that we try to communicate as well. But we really need to, when we get those complaints, we need to dig in and see if it is actually price gouging, or if it is simply a matter of the cost being passed through from the wholesaler to the business, to the consumer.
So how you do that? You have to, because I'm sure the store is gonna say that, we just did, our wholesalers charging us a higher fee, so we got to pass it on to the consumer. How would you know that's truly the case?
Great question. We have a staff, and this is true for the other investigations that we may open, is with price gouging in particular, we will first start off sending a warning letter to the business and sometimes putting them on notice of what the statute is. And that often will resolve a matter. With other, and this gives an opportunity to talk about, we have around 9 attorneys. And so we're able to, and then with the investigators, we're able to, if we start an investigation, we may send an investigative demand or a subpoena to gather more information to see what the facts are. So we have that ability in the office to issue subpoenas and find facts. It's not just a matter of, a very valid concern. We're just not necessarily taking someone's word for it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One last question, Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate both of y'all walking us through everything that your office is doing. And through the course of this back and forth, you've told us that some of these complaints get referred to other state agencies. Some of them you're able to handle with the individual consumer. My question is, what percentage would you say result in legal action from your office, and what is that standard? Is it a class action standard, or what is the bar that it needs to meet before y'all take action?
Sure. Thank you for the question. We have, with a staff of under 50 people and 20,000 complaints, and maybe a quarter of those, maybe 20% of those, people see the word consumer in the name of the office and they call us. It might be an insurance issue, and that's sent to the Department of Insurance. We and many complaints are simply, that's an individual dispute. It's not something that might be in the public interest to open an investigation on. So we certainly don't open 20,000 investigations a year. I don't have a percentage, but I do have, we do list many of the cases on our website of accomplishments of the office, where we give examples of, like the debt collection case I mentioned is on it has a description of what we did and who the company was on the website. And part of what we want to do too is act as a deterrent out there. So we're hopeful that if we take one action, that the word's going to get out in a particular industry that, oh, this is being looked at, and not all, certainly not all businesses are, there are good businesses out there. And part of what we're trying to do is if someone is acting improper, that's not fair to the store down the street or on the internet that's playing by the rules. It's not fair to that person. And so we're hopeful we're sending a deterrent message as well. And sometimes we'll partner with the Federal Trade Commission or the CFPB. And we will also work with the Better Business Bureau. So bottom line is I don't have a specific number for you, but
Appreciate it.
That's why it's important for consumers to file complaints too, because it can show us a pattern if one exists. So, that's why we want everybody to file a complaint that feels like they should.
Okay, thank you. One last question, Representative Dukes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is this: you mentioned the insurance, consumer protection. So they handle consumer protection when it comes to the insurance claims, and you all handle it when it comes to everything else. My question is how many different people or how many different agencies are responsible for consumer protection?
Oh, very good question. And many of our state agencies will have their own consumer protection function. For example, with gasoline, if there is, I'm going to give you one example. With gasoline, if there is a problem with the price that's labeled on the pump or on the sign on the road, that's the Department of Agriculture. And they have staff that looks at that. So many of our state agencies will have their own consumer protection function. They may call it something else. So there are many, but what our staff is trained to do is figure out and know where that consumer needs to go for help. So that consumer isn't bounced around from place to place, that we're able to get the consumer to the right agency the first time if they call us without knowing they should be someplace else. So-
Follow up. Wouldn't it be better if we just had one agency that was responsible for that, such that the consumer wouldn't have to, if they got a gas problem, that's a consumer protection issue. So the first time I would call, probably would try to be consumer protection people. And then after that, you're gonna send me over to agriculture. Wouldn't it be better if we just had one agency that dealt with consumer protection and we could pick up on the economies of scales? You'd have more than 150 people now, wouldn't you?
I think that I agree there could be more efficiencies there. I think there are experts in each agency that may be better suited, and this may go to, you may want to have one place to go, but there are going to be particular areas of expertise that are going to be needed in different industries. But I agree that it could, it could create more efficiency if there was like just one place.
Okay.
One place to go.
We're gonna move on. Thank you. Appreciate you being here, and I think everybody's got their information, contact, and this is very helpful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're gonna change tracks just a little bit. We've been contacted, this committee as well as the Senate committee has been contacted by one of our commodity commissions, Commodity Commission for Propane. They've had some changes on their board and need to replace one of their Commodity Commission members. And I think Larry Stocks is sold his business or rotated off for whatever reason out of the business. And they are recommending the Propane Association, Thomas Trowell, to replace him. And it's up to this committee. This committee appoints 3 members. The Senate appoints 3 members, I think. And to those, to that particular commodity commission, if y'all recall, we passed that legislation 2 or 3 years ago, setting up the propane commodity commission where they self-assess themselves for promotion. And so they've asked for this. What's the will of the committee? Got a motion? Got a second? Any other nominations? Hearing none, nomination closed. All in favor of adding Thomas Trowell to the Propane Commodity Commission, say aye. Opposed? Okay, well done. We'll notify them and Department of Ag and Secretary of State of that. We have one more item. We got a question.
Thank you.
Tim.
Since you brought up the propane, and I know it's really not on the agenda, but a couple of my dealers have contacted me about the way they are being monitored. The department used to come out and measure the propane, and now it's going to be they have to just self-report. And I'm a little bit concerned about that because you'll have those that do it right and some that won't. And because it is propane, it can be dangerous. I'd just like to see if we can't address that this year in the committee to find out a little bit more about it. It was a change at the department.
Okay,
Thank you.
I don't know if I see anybody from the department here. But well,
Just something to look at next
certainly,
year.
something to be a great question. Who monitors the propane and how they do that?
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Chairman Taylor. Last on our agenda is we have a distinguished professor in the Department of Agriculture and Applied Economics at my alma mater, UGA, Dr. Gopith Musami. If you'd come to the table, we appreciate you being here. We've we got a lot of moving parts going on in our ag industry and agribusiness industry now, and I hear you're the real expert on some things. So appreciate you taking the time to come in front of this committee.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members. It's my pleasure to be here with you today to talk about the state of the ag economy. And I want to talk about the current challenges that we face, as well as that are coming up. Okay, so that's my agenda for the afternoon. And my name is Gopi Munisamy. I am currently the Distinguished Professor of Agriculture Marketing at the University of Georgia. And I used to work at USDA. I was a senior executive there. And when I left Washington, I turned in my suits and tie to the Goodwill. So I was returning to academics. So what I want to do is kind of begin by, slide's not moving. There we go. I got it. Thank you. Appreciate it. I want to begin by touting the importance of Georgia agriculture to the Georgian economy. And UGA estimates that Georgia agriculture is the #1 industry in the state. And it has a $70 billion economic footprint just from production, processing, and wholesale. That doesn't include retail or food service establishments. And then 1 in 7 Georgians works in agriculture, forestry, and related industries. Okay, that's how important agriculture is. So allow me to kind of talk about some trends in Georgia agriculture before I bring up the current challenges that I'm talking about. Okay, so here is a number that I was kind of a little bit surprised when I looked at it. The net farm income that U.S. Department of Agriculture compiles by the total country as well as by state shows that between 2019, 2020, we lost some net farm income. It was $2.55 billion in 2019, and in 2020, it was 1.92. Okay. The primary reason for that fall is because of the fall in broiler production value. Okay. And what is more troubling, which I'll come back to at the end of the presentation, is that we've had a downward trend since a historic peak back in 2012, when net farm income was $3.19 billion. And also to note is 42% of the 2020 net farm income came from government payments. And those include both the longstanding Farm Bill program payments, as well as the discretionary programs like CFAP, MFP, and PPP. Okay. So that's the trend on the farm income side. And you can look at that from a cash receipts point of view as well. And you can clearly see the broilers value production driving the cash receipts from 2019 to 2020 in that slide. And cotton, eggs, peanuts, vegetables, fruits, these are all important commodities to us. Okay. And again, this is USDA data. There are some challenges to USDA data, and I'm happy to talk about that if you want more information. But again, there is a downward trend in the decade 2010 to 2020. Okay. We've had a historic peak back in 2013, $10.05 billion. Cash receipts are down to $7.7 billion in 2020. So if you look at that in the exports, it's very similar. We have the pattern of exports mimics the pattern of farm income and cash receipts. And our #1 export is cotton. Even though broiler meat is a #3 export, we supply the rest of the country a big chunk of broiler meat. Okay, Americans have come to rely on the poultry industry in Georgia. And tree nuts, if anybody is interested, is a significant component of it. And exports, just like farm income, as well as cash receipts, peaked at $3.6 billion in 2013, and it's been on a downward trend since then. Okay. So that leads me to the challenges that we face now and possibly upcoming. And I want to outline a few here, and they're all economic challenges. I'm not even talking about technology, production, disease, all those other challenges. That's for somebody else working in hard sciences. I'm an economist. Okay, so I'll present to you today the economic challenges I see out there. The first one is on things that we've heard. We have the chairman of the Transportation Committee here, trade and port delays. Okay, we've heard plenty of that, and I'm going to explain that in a moment with some pictures from American Farm Bureau Federation. I want to talk a little bit about the hangover or the leftover from the trade war and the produce industry challenges, which I worked with Chairman Watson last year. And then I want to talk about input costs. I've heard that as well from many of you folks. It's fertilizers and chemicals, but it also packaging materials. Labor availability has been a long-standing issue in Georgia agriculture, but there's some newer challenges coming up because of the pandemic, okay? And there's some cost increases associated with the labor, which I want to point out. And finally, the current administration is committed to a climate smart agriculture and forestry strategy. And what does it mean for Georgia agriculture is something that I'm trying to get at. So let's go with the first challenge. Here is the picture from the American Farm Bureau Federation that computed average wait time at anchor, or average time waiting at anchor. That's what they use. Average time waiting at anchor in all major ports. And the last one you see is Savannah. It went from 1.3 days of waiting at anchor to 2.6 days, the second highest change in the nation during the pandemic. Okay. The West Coast ports also had faced delays, but here we've had the second highest delay. And the second issue at the port delay with the trade issue is the fact that we have empty containers going back to our exporters, particularly China. And here is a picture again from the American Farm Bureau Federation. It looked at the last 52 weeks and broke that into two pieces, the first 26 weeks and the last 26 weeks. In the last 26 weeks, the share of empty containers going back has gone up to 50%, nearly 50% in Savannah Port. Okay, so why do we care about this? We have three different ports here in this picture, if you can see that. The middle part is Port of Savannah, and you'll notice that nearly 40% of poultry meat is exported through Port of Savannah. Another 28% of cotton is exported through Port of Savannah. It is important to our produce industry. Vegetables, fruits, and tree nuts also go through Port of Savannah, okay? So the delay, the doubling of the time that it takes for ships to come up and unload and run back with the empty containers, not taking our products out, is really affecting us, okay? And American Farm Bureau summarized this in two ways. One, these inefficiencies at the port are affecting the bottom line for our producers. Yes, they do. And if you add the cost of purchased inputs, which I'm going to get to in a moment, it's further tightening the low margins we've got and actually is challenging solvency in the agriculture sector. So before I get to the cost of purchased inputs, I want to talk briefly about two issues on trade. The phase one deal with China, it's been quiet for some time, ever since January of 2020, but the phase one deal is set to expire soon. And there is not additional information from Washington, DC about what is going to happen after the phase one deal expires. The last time I listened to the US Trade Representative, Catherine Toy, they are looking to enforce phase one deal, okay? But I haven't heard anything more about this administration's position on the US-China trade relations. And so there is some lingering uncertainty because China only temporarily lifted those tariffs that they imposed on us. So the phase one deal is critical to us, and there's some leftovers and hangovers from the trade war, and that uncertainty is going to be a concern to our producers, particularly cotton and tree nuts and others. The second issue is working with the Georgia Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association last year, we made our case to the previous administration about the injury to the produce industry from Mexican and other imports coming into the country, okay? We have some investigations concluded by ITC, but we have some that are ongoing. But a word that we get from DC repeatedly on this is that it is hard to find recourse for regional injury. Okay, and that's something that we've heard from many of these agencies that are assessing the injury to the produce industry. Moving on to the input cost. This has been a huge challenge in the past few months in particular. One index of fertilizer prices has shot up by triple digits. And this is the North American Fertilizer Index. It's now over $1,000 per ton. And you can look at the long-term range, it's much smaller than that. In the last 2-3 months, it just hit 1,048. As you can see in the picture, I checked the data yesterday, it was 1,098. It's not coming down, it continues to keep going up. The second part of the story is you can clearly see the culprit as to why we have these prices going up. And here we see ammonia, urea, DAP, and natural gas prices. They're all moving together. And that's what's driving this input price story. And if you looked at Packer.com, they talk about the prices of everything from PLU to boxes, top pads, everything, gone up from anywhere between 1.5%, 2.5% to 15% this year. Resin, as well as transport cost increases, underlie this price inflation in packaging materials. And to summarize the supply chain issues that we face, I kind of went back to Mr. Ben Franklin, the early American supply chain expert, who said, for one of a nail, the shoe was lost. And for one of a shoe, the horse was lost. And for one of a horse, the rider was lost. And for one of the rider, the battle was lost. And for one of a battle, the kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a horseshoe nail. Okay. And this basically explains the supply chain issues that we are facing right now. This was back in 1757. Okay. And I can replace the nail with the chip and the horse with the car. We can just get the same story today that we saw, in 1757. Okay. Labor availability, as I mentioned, has been a longstanding challenge to Georgia agriculture, but the pandemic threw a couple of wrenches to it. And one of the issues was, my understanding, I'm not a labor economist, but my understanding is the visa approval processes kind of held up. Okay, and the approvals went through, and some flexibility built into the H-2A process was also helpful, but workers were delayed in their arrivals. Okay, because of the pandemic processes, both in their home countries as well as in our borders. Okay, and an ongoing UGA study found that anywhere between 1 to 4 weeks of delay in terms of worker arrivals. Okay, and that can be very critical, particularly in the produce industry. You got to harvest now, not a week from now or 2 weeks from now. Okay, and in addition to that, the adverse effect wage rate, which is the wage that we provide to H-2A workers, went up by 4.5% in 2021 relative to 2020. And this is just fresh off the press. We had the COP26 conference just conclude, and I'm still sorting through the official documents as well as the press releases from various agencies. But USDA has a page called USDA Climate Solutions, and primarily talk about a climate smart agriculture and forestry strategy. And as I dig through the data and the information in there, it talks about investments in the NRCS mission area, Natural Resource and Conservation Mission area, talking about expanding CRP potentially to 100 million acres, expanding, that is the Conservation Reserve Program, and possibly expanding EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, the Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP, as well as the Regional Conservation Partnership Programs and the Rural Energy for America REAP program. Investments in those contexts. And in terms of the commitments made in COP26, which I've kind of gotten barely out of the media as well, because the deal was struck yesterday, was that much of it is focused on conservation, and the commitments on livestock are more like, again, conservation focused on issues like dairy net zero, which is kind of hosted under the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization framework. Okay, there was some discussion early on before COP26 about carbon tariffs and the carbon border adjustment mechanism, but I have not heard any details on the design or implementation of those issues, those mechanisms. So to conclude, I appreciate the opportunity here. Georgia agriculture has been vulnerable to shocks over the past decade. And I'm going to go reverse chronologically here. COVID-19, trade war, natural disasters, hurricanes that you've had, Michael and others, and then bird flu, if you remember 2013 and 14. And now you can see the trend in the farm income. You can see the trend in the cash receipts And the export story that I mentioned early on, that it has been trending downward because for the past 9-8 years, we've been bombarded by shocks after shocks. Okay. And farm income pattern shows significant stress. And each segment of the farm sector is facing a unique challenge. It's not like you can just throw one policy at it and resolve all these issues within Georgia agriculture. The current challenges on trade, input cost, transportation, and other issues, labor issues, have led to price increases, both on the input side as well as on the output side. But it is not clear that the price increases on the output side compensate for the price increases on the input side. So in the net, that farmers benefit from what is happening out there. Okay. Finally, the price increases are affecting consumers, particularly with those with low income. And there are serious affordability and accessibility issues in that particular context. Okay. So with that, I conclude. Thank you for the opportunity. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Doctor. I wish you had better news. That's pretty sobering. I'll tell you. Those of us in the production end recognize it pretty good, but it certainly will affect everyone down to the consumer.
I want to be honest with you in terms of the challenges we faced, and I could sugarcoat this, but the challenges are out there, and it's going to take a little bit longer to fix those challenges.
Yeah, you know, I tell people though that Georgia agriculture is pretty diverse. We have a diversity in the commodities that we grow and the things we do, and thank goodness for that. I've got a question, and you sort of touched on it. These increased costs. We hear out of Washington that they are temporary. I don't see it. What is your view on this inflationary pressure we have, not only on agricultural inputs, but on everything else? As an economist, could you speak to that for just a minute?
I'm not in the business of forecasting. I wish I am, but I can at least see the next 3-4 months. Some of this is related to, as I understand the markets, the winter in Europe and their demand for natural gas and crude oil. And that's the reason why the prices start going up in those markets. And how bad this winter is going to exacerbate the problem or alleviate the problem. So that I believe is going to dictate. So I would look for temperatures in Berlin and Frankfurt and London and other places, and keep an eye on it for my own projection purposes. But I think until we come out of this winter, it is hard to predict the demand for the crude oil and natural gas, and that's going to be a major player in terms of input costs.
Let me ask another question, if I may. Ag production is very capital intensive. Do you see interest rates rising as well, which would be a big cost to a lot of producers? Have you looked at the pressures on that going forward?
I have a general opinion that I hear from the academics and Federal Reserve, and I have my own opinion on it, so I'll share both with you. Okay. The Federal Reserve doesn't believe in the inflation is going to go up significantly. Sorry, the interest rate isn't going to go up significantly. They are planning to raise interest rates once or twice for 2022. And I think with interest rates around 0 to 2.5% right now, we are looking at 0.5, 0.75 next year. And I look at that from a global environment, not necessarily from just the US environment. You get negative interest rates, nominal, not even real, in Switzerland. So if you want to send your money to Switzerland, they're going to tax you for depositing in there. Okay. So I'm not seeing a rapid rise in the interest rates from what I understand out there, but it kind of relates to the inflation story I just answered you earlier. If the inflation just gets out of control, Fed has no tool but to raise the interest rate, and that would probably go together. So your questions are related. And my own opinion on that is I've been told for the past 15 years that interest rates are going to go up as we keep printing money, but people seem to be liking our bonds and T-bills and keep buying and buying from overseas. So I don't know what to make out of it.
Okay, thank you. I see on our screen with several other committee meetings, Representative Yurda, what number are you? Oh, there you are, 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Professor, on bringing this information to us. And we appreciate what the University of Georgia does in our state and our most important interest in our state. And I was just wondering if we could get a copy of your presentation, and I'd love to have that. And it's very informative, and I appreciate you putting it together and presenting this today.
Happy to share. I think you have a copy, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, Representative Dukes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Professor. Well, my question is, and what the farmers that I represent have come to me and said that the price of everything is going up.
Okay.
And, you know, there are some costs that have been passed on to them. But for me as a consumer, I'm paying about, I'd say almost in some instances, about 50% more than for beef than what I paid in the pre-COVID. But my farmers are saying that they're not getting any more money. So.
It's being absorbed in the supply chain context. The cost of the supply chain have gone up because we are sourcing materials from so many different places, and the price of those materials have gone up. In addition, in the processing facilities, for example, you got to have these social distancing procedures. The labors are separated. You have to have protective equipment and so on. So the cost in the intermediate part of the chain has also exploded on top of this. Yesterday, Tyson reported their numbers, and they have said basically we are going to pass on the cost increases from the farm level in the supply chain onto the consumers. And this is what is, I think, across the board, all segments of the supply chain are facing this kind of a price increase.
Okay. Representative Lewis Ward, next up.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Doctor, for being here this afternoon. I may have missed this during your presentation, so I'm just asking for clarity. You mentioned that the household with low income is impacted by this through accessibility. Were you describing that the products are no longer affordable, or the products are not reaching the neighborhoods?
I believe the availability issue is less of a concern this time around. And back in March of 2020, the grocery store shelves were empty across the board. And in terms of a survey conducted, there is food available. And I'm not seeing a shock in terms of that empty shelves that we saw. But prices, as the other representative told us, food prices have gone up 4.5% on average in September. Meat prices have gone up 10% just in September. And so if your income, much of it is spent on food, you are going to be priced out of this Thanksgiving. So I'm seeing this more of a affordability issue, but I'm not 100% sure that there is an access issue, but I can check on that and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, Representative, okay. Chairman Watson.
Mr. Chairman, I don't really have a question, Gopi. I guess have more of a statement for the committee, and maybe you can help. I just first want to thank you for all of your work that you've done on trade and helping us with those issues. You've done phenomenal work there through the University of Georgia, and you know all the conversations that we've had, and we have not been successful, but we've put up a good fight. So thank you for that. But I guess just for the committee, this is real. I don't, in my district, I don't hear about the Atlanta Braves, and I don't hear about the Georgia Bulldogs, or even who's in the White House. I hear about rising input costs, and I'm still, we're still getting paid for, prices that we received 10, 15 years ago. And Gopi's just showed everyone what the cost of production has done. And this is serious. This is huge to our state, and it's almost, I've kind of phrased it as we had a farm gate crisis unfolding before our eyes, and we don't really realize it, because this model is not sustainable, and we cannot continue to do, because it continues to cost more and more, and we're getting less and less for what we do. And so that means we disappear, and then food becomes harder to get. And that last low income comment that Gopi had in his presentation, that becomes real for all of us, not just low income. But this is serious, and this is all I hear about back home. And I don't know what the answer is, Gopi, but I thank you for bringing your presentation, because it is real. And I don't know what people are going to do in my district. I really don't. I don't know what I'm going to do in my own business, because it just doesn't make sense to do it at the end of the day. So thank y'all for listening.
Thank you for that, Chairman Watson. And I know you and Chairman Jaspers and many of us working through our Rural Development Council. Rural Georgia really depends on a strong ag committee economy, and we don't have that right now, and that's just another nail in the coffin for our rural Georgia citizens, for business and employment throughout there. So it's some serious challenges in our state right now. And thank you. That's one reason I really appreciate you coming here this afternoon. And so we've got some work to do. That is the end of our presentations. I just want to ask y'all, if we don't meet again, hopefully we will be finished with this special session sooner rather than later. But if you have any ideas legislation wise or things for the committee between now and January, be sure to pick up the phone and call me or email me or text me, whatever. We just try to keep each other in the loop. I want to thank my AA League Off over there for keeping everybody in the loop and helping me stay up to speed on everything. David here next door, thank you for your help. David Hartman is a huge help to this committee and can get some questions answered for the committee members too, if you let me or him know. One more piece of business I want to mention to you is a former member of this, longtime member of this committee and farmer, Limor James, passed away recently, and I just want to keep him and his family in your prayers. He was a giant of a member for this ag committee, so I want to remember him. Is there any other business? Anyone else have anything? I don't see any. So motion to adjourn. I'll move. Adjourn. Thank y'all for being here.